Hi, I'm Angus Kress Gillespie, your host for East Brunswick Television. I'm here today with Kathy Kelly. She's an historian and one of the leading voices in paranormal tourism. She founded Paranormal Books and Curiosities, as well as the Paranormal Museum in Asbury Park, New Jersey, back in 2008. This was the very first museum in the United States dedicated exclusively to the paranormal. As a folklorist, I have many research interests that overlap with Kelly's. By way of background, I recently stopped by Kathy's bookstore. It was an amazing place, with a collection of some 4,000 books concerning all manner of supernatural experiences. Given my experience with Jersey Devil research, I began by looking for books on that topic. I really thought I had all of them in my own library. I was wrong. Here, I found 6 new books on the Jersey Devil. I was pleased and amazed. In addition to the bookstore, there's an amazing museum that explores ghost stories, legends, unexplained phenomena, and spiritual traditions from all around the world. So it's my pleasure to welcome Kathy Kelly to our studio today. Kathy, tell me a little bit about growing up in Jersey City.
Well, I was born in Jersey City. I stayed there for about 5 years. And then my family moved to Glen Ridge, which is just right around, it's still in Essex County. It's in Essex County. It's around Montclair. But I still stayed very close to Jersey City because when my parents came onto this country, that's where they kind of put their weights in. So Jersey City is still very much a part of how I identify myself.
Yeah. And so it was about age 6 that you went to Glen Ridge.
So I started school. I was 5 years old. I started school in Glen Ridge. I have a large family, so it was interesting because my brothers were in their teens when we moved there. So it was a bit of a culture shock to move from a really urban community where we were in a building and we knew all of our neighbors to kind of move to Glen Ridge, which was much more bucolic to us.
A farmhouse.
Yeah, it was definitely a farmhouse. And my parents being from Ireland, they really craved that. So it was an exciting time. But it definitely was a culture shock.
Yeah.
Definitely was.
And tell me a little bit about Glen Ridge High School experience.
So Glen Ridge is a very small school. I graduated with a class of 74 people. I think it was 74, 75 people. I thought it was a fantastic experience. It was just like every other American high school. There were cliques, but the education was phenomenal. And I think it was a really great community experience.
Okay, and then tell us about the experience of Ramapo College.
Ramapo is interesting because I didn't actually elect to go to Ramapo. I wasn't really ready to do kind of anything, and a guidance counselor of mine at Glen Ridge applied for a scholarship program at Ramapo without telling me. And I went on the interview and I won this scholarship, which allowed me to go to Oxford University for a semester. And then it was a 4-year scholarship to Ramapo, which ended up just really being a great fit for me. It's a beautiful campus and it was very one-on-one. And I think Ramapo is like I think it's a jewel of New Jersey that people don't really, they're not often aware of.
Sure. And then tell me about your experience. You were working with your father's firm starting in 1991?
So I started working with Kelly Broadcasting, which was a company that was started by my brother and my father. And I ended up working mostly in sports content, but I had a degree in literature, which is very wonderful degree to have. Not always the most useful kind of getting out of school, certainly not in the early 90s. And so I moved into production and broadcast and ended up working primarily in the sport of cricket, which was great because it's such an obscure thing that when I moved on to other things in my life, it wasn't the weirdest thing that I had done.
Yeah. And then how did things change once your father's firm was sold in 2007?
So I continued I stayed with what was now EchoStar. Lots of things did change though, and I ended up staying kind of as an advisor because my focal point was extremely unique and very, very focused on one particular market, which was expats sports marketing, right? And nobody else in the country was doing it. So they couldn't really let me go. So I stayed for about 10 years. And then ultimately I left after, no, I didn't. I'm sorry. I didn't stay that long, but I did stay to do the last World Cup with them. And then I kind of moved on to do my own thing.
And your own thing, as I understand it, you had this idea about a bookstore.
I did.
But strangely enough, this is a bookstore in all places, Asbury Park.
Yes.
How did that happen?
So when I left my former career, and I loved what I was doing, which was really market development and kind of like working with people who have interesting ideas. But I had a passion too, and my passion was the unusual, the strange, the fringe. And there was not a better place in New Jersey to do something crazy, like open a paranormal bookstore, except for Asbury Park. Asbury Park was like the Wild West back then. You could do pretty much anything because nobody was paying attention, So I was able to find space.
Maybe it was more affordable.
Well, it was completely more affordable, and it was more affordable because there was very little traffic going through it. But it was. I always felt that what I was doing would pull people in. I wasn't relying on the existing foot traffic, so I thought that what I was doing would start to attract its own kind of audience, and I think it did.
Yeah.
I think ultimately, almost 20 years later, I think we proved the point.
And how do you go about selecting the books for your bookstore?
So I have very small space in the bookstore, so it's really very much, oftentimes it's a whim where someone will come in and say, hey, I'm interested in this particular part of the subject matter. And a lot of times I'll think it never occurred to me. Let's see if other people are interested in this. And so we have our big topics, and I try to rotate through as many independent authors as I possibly can because I think it's really important to support independent authors. But it also means that if you come into the shop, you're going to find something new pretty much any time you come in.
Yeah. So what are some of the challenges that you've faced in dealing with the bookstore?
I would say the location was a big challenge, and the subject matter was a bit of a challenge. And staffing, mainly because the subject matter of our shop, you really have
It's specialized.
It's very specialized. It's extremely niche. And you really do kind of have to have an understanding and a passion for it so that you could help people, because a lot of people come into our shop not knowing what they want and they're looking for direction. I have been very fortunate in my staff, but it has also been a struggle to find the right fit for people. But like I said, my staff, some of them, I met when they were 16, 17 years old, and I've watched their children grow up now. So they're still kind of part of the larger family of paranormal.
And I read some critics have said that ghost tours are the prostitution of history.
Yes.
How do you deal with this?
Well, I went and got a master's degree because somebody said that. So, I think that I disagree with it. And
you do promote ghost tours.
Oh yeah, we do a ghost tour. That was one of the first things that we did was a ghost. We call it a haunted history tour, but it's a ghost tour, and proudly that. And I do it not just here in New Jersey, but I have another location as well. And to be honest with you, I think it's one of the greatest ways of introducing people into local history. It's certainly a great way to inspire people to come. And if you look at our reviews, you'll always see people say, I had no idea there was so much history here. And there's history everywhere. It just takes an interesting story to get people excited about it.
And And Kathy, how do you engage with the local community?
Well, at this point, I'm the old guard. At this point, I've been there very, very long. I'm a very active community member. I've been here, I've been around for a really long time. But in the beginning, it was very hard to get people to want to be associated with what we were doing. Now, I think they look at us as something that they're super proud their town has. So I was sitting in a restaurant not too long ago, and one of the waiters was talking to this table, and they happened to be looking out the window, and there were 25 people on our ghost tour. And they said to the waiter, they said, "What is that going on over there?" And the waiter was a young man, and he goes, "Oh, that's our ghost tour," meaning Asbury Park's ghost tour, and they're proud of it and excited to be a part of it.
That's nice.
Yeah, it's great.
And so the ghost tour, that's an event. Are there other events that you put on?
So we do multiple history tours, but we do two main events every year that we present. One is the Jersey Devil Fable Festival, which is the first weekend in May every year. And then we also do Krampus Asbury Park, which is based on the German and North European folklore of the creature Krampus. And both of them are really myth, legend, and folklore festivals that we try to engage and have people come and talk about what I think are really important subjects, which is kind of the history and the heritage of our folklore. And there are also things that I really enjoy doing. So it's not, I don't gauge the success on any numbers. I gauge the success purely on, did I have a good time? Did I meet good people?
And it's kind of tricky. I mean, the Jersey Devil Fable Festival, it's outdoors within a city.
Yeah.
So basically, you can only shut off one block.
Right, right. And that was hard to do. There was it was hard to get the buy-in from the city to allow me to do the different events that I do. And with the Jersey Devil, there was also the pushback because it's located in Asbury Park and it's not located in the Pine Barrens, or it's not located in communities that are associated with the Jersey Devil. And my response has always been, well, you had 250 some odd years to do your own festival if you wanted to, and I'll happily support it. I actually started the Jersey Devil Festival to kind of commemorate the Phenomenal Week and to get the conversation going. And it's one of my favorite things that we do. And I love being able to present wonderful speakers like yourself to a community that may not even be aware that the thing that they're interested in has a deep and long history and is more than a hockey team.
Yeah.
It's more than a hockey team.
Yeah, I enjoyed speaking at the Jersey Devil Fable Festival. There were all kinds of people who had been following my work.
Well, you're a rock star when it comes to the Jersey Devil Fable Festival.
So, what about the challenges you've faced in this industry?
Well, I love the challenges. I love the pushback or being pushed to pivot because it really forces me to be creative. And like you said, part of it is like I have an outdoor festival, and a couple of years ago, it rained. It rained, and you just kind of have to take the hits when the hits come. I would say for me, the challenges have been with being taken seriously from a heritage, historical, and folkloric standpoint, because the name of my business sometimes people have a perception about it that is unfortunate. We're
it's
limiting.
not serious.
Yeah, exactly. They don't want to be associated with they want to be taken more seriously. And because, especially the academics, I will say this though, within the last 10 years, that has really shifted. And I find a lot more.
As you've become more established.
And also I think as people's minds have broadened a bit to understand that term doesn't negate intelligence, intellect, or or a value of history. It's not limiting the approach to history. It's welcoming and opening the approach to history.
Okay, let's shift a bit. We've been talking about the bookstore. We've been talking about the festival. Tell us about the museum. How did that all get started?
So and the funny thing about the museum is that the Paranormal Museum has become kind of the focal point of everything paranormal. And it did not start out that way. It started out as a very private collection that I was keeping in my house, and it just grew beyond
your things.
Yeah, it was my stuff. It was my stuff from my travels. And because I was a person that took this subject matter seriously, and I do take it seriously, but I also took people's experiences seriously, I would end up kind of being the receptacle of things that people were afraid of. So they would say, I don't want to get rid of it. I'm a little bit afraid of it. Can I drop it off at your house? And I would always say, of course, sure, no problem. Which meant I ended up with 200 haunted dolls and 150 haunted Ouija boards, in my basement. And I started to realize that there are people out there that would really find this stuff interesting, number one. And number two, these are really interesting stories and that's what's interesting to me about the artifacts, are the personal stories that come with them. And I actually opened the Jersey Devil Museum first. It was the Jersey Devil Museum. I opened that in 2009, and it was a lot of it was.
It was focused.
Yeah, it was hyper-focused. It was hyper-focused on a very specific time in the Jersey Devil history, and it did fine. But it needed to expand it. It needed to grow to become more subjects than just that very specific one. And I had opened it in 2009 because it was the 100th anniversary of the Phenomenal Week, and I loved it. It was great. And I have found that as my interests have kind of broadened and changed, so has the museum. So the museum is really kind of like my head or my brain. You can tell the different things that I've been interested in over the last 20 years.
Do you take walk-in visits, or should people make a reservation?
We do have walk-ins now. We were in a specifically private tour model because of COVID, but we've shifted now. So we have scheduled tours. All of our tours are guided because we need to contextualize the story. It's the best way to experience the museum. And I do recommend calling ahead or booking ahead just so that there's space available for you, but you can.
Because it's a small place.
It's a small space, and what we really want to do is make sure that your experience is the best experience that we have. So we limit our tours to between 6 and 8 people.
Wow.
So, so if you can buy online, you can call ahead.
Yeah.
We'll accommodate as many.
Now, it's very small.
Yeah.
How do you go about planning for a new exhibit? Do you have to get rid of an old one? Or?
Sometimes, sometimes I'll rotate things out for a specific thing, or sometimes I'll just squeeze it in. I'll just push it in. I'm like they say a goldfish grows to accommodate the size of its tank. That's how the museum is. So every time I find new space, I find an artifact for it or an exhibit for it. It has forced us to be creative, but I don't have any problem putting more and more in there. I want people. I want them to get excited. I want them to feel connected to the
What's
stories.
an example of a new thing that's been recently added?
So I recently did, I got 2 new recent things. They're a little dark. I got a sign that was donated to us by a former Marine who had been stationed in Japan. Actually, you're never a former Marine, right? You're always a Marine,
That's
right?
true.
So a retired Marine, I should say. And he had gone to the Aokigahara Forest, which is known as the Suicide Forest or the Sea of Trees. And it has a really kind of darkly beautiful story. But he had it in his house for several years. His wife found it and said, I'm not comfortable with this in the house anymore. And he said, okay, but I don't want to get rid of it. And so he's actually out in Montana, and he found us online and said, I want this story told, and I want to make sure that it doesn't just go by the wayside. And so he just shipped it out to us.
What does the sign say?
It's actually a sign that alerts people that they're on camera. Right. So they have sectioned off the forest pathways to make sure that people don't go into deeply into the forest. And this was one of those signs. And he ended up taking it under unusual circumstances. But he felt strongly enough about it, and he felt it was meaningful enough that he didn't want to just throw it in the trash. He didn't want to send it back. He wanted the story told, and he wanted it to be preserved. And so that's something that we got. I also have. It's
kind of warning people against suicide.
What it essentially is saying is we're watching you. You're on camera, and the story is very moving, the story of it. But that's the kind of stuff where this is somebody, 1,500, 2,000 miles away who's just saying, I don't want to destroy this or forget about it. I want it to be remembered. Who is going to remember it? And sometimes we're the only ones that might actually be a place that will remember it and hold on to it.
Now, I take it that oftentimes people come to this museum from far and wide because they're interested in the subject. Mm-hmm. But what's the role of your museum within Asbury Park?
I think we're something Asbury Park is really proud of. I think that as Asbury Park has come back kind of from its darker days, and is navigating some really, difficult times right now, where the growth has been very, very fast and people are being priced out, and there's all of these different things that are happening. I think that we are a business that represents Asbury Park's authenticity. We are a weird, gritty, pull yourself up by your bootstraps type of business. We are not, I oftentimes laugh about Big Ghost, we're not Big Ghost. We're a little local business.
It's not a chain store.
Exactly. And when you come in, you see our scars, and you see we're scruffy, and if you've been to any of our events, everything is do it yourself. There's very little glitter, at any of my events. And I think that that's what resonates with people, is that they feel an authenticity.
And how do you measure the success of a museum exhibit?
For me, it's the stories that people respond with. So a lot of times, and we get reviews, when people leave, especially families, when parents leave and they high five us because they're like, my kids don't want to do anything else with us, but they loved it. It was the highlight of our trip. Oh. That, I could eat that for lunch every day, because that's what matters to me, is that people are coming in and they're connecting with what we're doing, and they're leaving with a good feeling.
Wow. And Kathy, what are your thoughts on the use of technology in the museum?
So I don't use a lot of technology in the museum. I like to kind of keep it as an analog, tactile experience, but I'm not opposed to it. I do understand that there are, and given our subject matter, I have to be super, super careful about the presentation that includes any kind of technology or any kind of graphics or audio or anything like that. Because then I think people will call into question the authenticity of what we're telling them or what. But I also really believe in storytelling. I really believe in having a person standing in front of you telling you a story is a communal experience. And so that's why I don't do a self-guided tour. I don't do an audio tour. There's a guide standing there telling you and responding to you.
Are you the guide, or you?
I have been, but I have a wonderful team of tour guides.
How many are on the team?
Now, we have about 9 tour guides right now.
And these are local residents.
They're all local residents. Some of them are authors. Some of them are historians. Some of them have done work in other haunted locations and have come to us because of what we do. And some of them grew up coming to us and have now reached an age where they can come and do the tours themselves.
Huh. And how do you engage with the museum's audience?
Well, we do a lot of social media outreach, but that isn't really primarily how people come to know us. I think people primarily come to know us through our events, and a lot of people do seek us out. I do think for years because we were private tours only, it was a little bit exclusionary, and that was never what I wanted. I always wanted the museum to be as available to as many people as it could be, especially because this subject matter often, it will appeal to families, it'll appeal to large groups. It has to be cost effective for them to be able to experience it. And so I think we've done a lot of different events, but I think after 18 years, the kind of the word has gotten out about us, and the word of mouth for the museum is huge for us.
And how do you see the future of the museum?
I think about that a lot. I think about who steps in if I step out, or because a lot of times a business like this can become about the personality of one person. And
yeah, your personality is really reflected.
And I do think that I've stepped back a little bit in the day-to-day to allow others to kind of step forward, because I would like to see it move on. I don't necessarily need it to grow. I don't need it to be larger or more. But I would be very disappointed if, God forbid, something happened to me, if it just kind of closed down because I wasn't there. So my ego loves the attention of being the person in the museum.
Yeah.
But my legacy, what I would love for there to be a legacy, I think it's good for me to kind of step back and let the museum take its own step forward.
A delicate question. Do you have a successor in mind?
I don't yet. Although I do have a few people that work for me that I think have the ethics, the passion, and I think the interest. And I'm not ready for that yet. But when I am, I think that there are a couple of people that would happily kind of step into it.
Yeah, I think you're wise to start this planning.
Yeah, start thinking about it, yeah.
And a very delicate question. Have you ever in your life, as far as you know, actually seen a ghost?
Seen a ghost? No. And I'll answer this the kind of pat way that I usually answer this question.
That's okay.
Which is, I'm a skeptic. I am not a cynic. I'm a skeptic, which means that I like to see the evidence come to me, and then I'll make my mind up on a case by case, right? And with our artifacts, that's never, I honestly don't care if I have the experience that the people claim they've had. I want to tell their story. I want to talk about that story. But I have been in pretty much every famous haunted place in this country. I have traveled the world. I've been to London. I've been to Ireland. I've been to Germany. I've been to France. I've been every place that you could, imagine. It's still a few places I want to get to, but I've gotten to a lot of them. I have seen enough that keeps me looking. So I like to say, especially with paranormal activity and experiences, there's no such thing as proof, but there is evidence. And you take that individual personal evidence and you put it into this pile, or you put it into this pile, and eventually it's gonna tip. I would say mine leans a certain way. It hasn't quite tipped over, but I'm open to it.
Kathy, thank you so much for sharing your time with us today.
Well, thank you so much for inviting me. I really enjoyed it.